This is a vid I've been wanting to make for some time now, ever since I beat Red Dead Redemption 2 when we streamed it back in October and early November. The ideas were being planted into my little head regarding what Red Dead Redemption 3 might or might not look like. By the way, I am doing a lot more collabing these days with other YouTubers, especially those within the GeauxBurns nation. And I actually did something I thought I would never, ever do. I played Fortnite with our favorite, with our favorite fly girl, Riley. So if you guys want to go check out Riley's video, feel free to do so. I actually played some Fortnite Air Royale with her, and it actually was kind of fun. I actually enjoyed Fortnite Air Royale. If they ever bring it back, I may play it again with her. I probably will never play the regular Fortnite because I'm not really into battle royales, but I had a hell of a pilot, so I think that's why we did good. Hell must have froze over because I could have swore I'd never play Fortnite, but Riley talked me into it. Women. Anyways, so let's get to it, shall we? Your ideas for Red Dead Redemption 3, and I'll mix in my ideas as well. And some of the ideas may actually align together. They may actually work. All right, so first off, Elephants on Acid. Let's see. He thinks that the Van der Linde story is wrapped up nicely from Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, but there'll probably be Red Dead Redemption 3, but with a different gang maybe. Wouldn't mind having a story with Landon Ricketts being the law, something different instead of being a criminal. As awesome as it would for us to be able to play as Landon Ricketts or to see Landon Ricketts in, say, Red Dead Redemption 3, sadly, Hagen, the voice actor that played Landon Ricketts, passed away. And unfortunately, we're never going to see Landon Ricketts again. Unless they manage to get a voice actor that sounds very similar to Landon. Maybe even passable as a younger Landon Ricketts. That's the only way I would see it work. But I don't think we're ever going to see Landon Ricketts again in any other Red Dead Redemption game. Now, it's possible that we may get a Red Dead Redemption remaster for a story DLC for Red Dead Redemption 2. That's not impossible. A lot of people theorize that. And they get to simply use the audio files that they have for Landon Ricketts. So we may see him again in, say, a Red Dead Redemption 1 remastered story DLC. But, yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see Landon again, sadly. Next is Kane. My problem with Red Dead Redemption 3 is that John Marston and the Van der Linde gang story is pretty much over. We learned what made John leave Dutch. We learned how Edgar Ross found John and why he has somewhat hatred for John. We learned what made Dutch lose his mind. We learned what caused the fall of the Van der Linde gang. At Red Dead Redemption 3 with a younger Dutch and Hosea would seem like a cash grab, and some of the events that happened with them before they met Arthur and John could easily be explained at camp. However, I would like to see a Red Dead Revolver 2 set a year after the events of Red Dead Revolver. We get to play as Red Harlow again and learn what happened to him after the first game's events. The gameplay of Red Dead Revolver 2 would be similar to Grand Theft Auto or the other two Red Dead Redemption games. Yeah, I don't want it to be like the spaghetti western style game that Red Dead Revolver was, but I do like the idea of bringing Red Harlow and a few characters from Red Dead Revolver back into Red Dead Redemption. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Next, let's go to Sedan. He would like Red Dead Redemption 3 to be set in the late 1880s. Bank robbers, I think, would be interesting if maybe we're in a gang that rivals Dutch's gang. So over the course, we're going to war with Dutch's younger gang, killing members who never made it to Red Dead Redemption 2's time frame, as well as a physical location. I think that we're going further west in the world. That would be cool. Maybe California. I think they also mentioned Nevada. I think that's mentioned along with some western locations. Well, I don't know if we'd actually get actually California or the Mojave Desert or Nevada. There'd probably be more fictional states that Rockstar would create. But see, having two cool larger cities like LA, then maybe a fictional Vegas could be fun. At the end, you end up playing as a member of Dutch's gang, maybe a young Arthur. It would make sense if we go that route to end up as a younger Arthur. And I'm not going to spoil anything that happens at the end of Red Dead Redemption 2 or Red Dead Redemption 1, but for those of us that beat both games, it makes sense. Let's see, you want a super gritty atmosphere with a bank robbing gang where your part is way worse than Dutch's gang. I mean, brutal. They steal horses, rob banks by shooting the place up. You play as a younger member of the gang who joins their family. Their family dies. You have a choice: either become terrible like them or try to be honorable. Actually, Sedan, what you mentioned could actually be doable. It could actually happen. We'll talk about that in a moment. I keep teasing what I'm going to talk about. But first, everyone else. By the way, if you have any ideas what you would like to see in Red Dead Redemption 3, the setting, characters, and whatnot, feel free and leave it below in the comment section. Nick Ballard would like a Red Dead Redemption 3 to start with the founding of the Dutch van der Linde gang and end with the Blackwater Massacre, a.k.a. the ferry job. They would most likely heavily dramatize the Blackwater Massacre, since it would be the ending with Jenny and other, like the Calendar boys, being killed in the massacre. We could see a younger Dutch, Hosea Meat, a younger Arthur and John, a younger Miss Grimshaw. The issue with this, though, is that the van der Linde gang was together for about 23 years. So fitting a 23 years storyline into a single game would be difficult unless they make a lot of flashback scenes to cover things, or it would have to be a very long game. This would be the best. I don't know if it would work as a Red Dead Redemption 2 story DLC, but I don't envision them doing like year jumps. Well, they could, theoretically, they could do maybe at least 2-year jumps, like from this year to that year, because that does happen in both Red Dead Redemptions. In Red Dead Redemption 1, there's a 1911, then 1914, and then in Red Dead Redemption 2, there's 1899 and 1907. So you could have at least a 2-year jump from 1 year period to another year period in Red Dead Redemption 3, similar to the way it goes in Red Dead Redemption 2 as well as Red Dead Redemption 1. Before we set off with my idea regarding Red Dead Redemption 3, which will have some similar themes and characters already mentioned by Nick, Sedan, as well as Kane and Elephants, just wanted to thank them. I appreciate them taking the time to write out their ideas. And now, let us move on with what I think is going to happen in Red Dead Redemption 3. So as we gallop around Red Dead Redemption 2 as Arthur Morgan, I will tell you what I think is going to happen with Red Dead Redemption 3. Now, first off, I think we are many, many years away from Red Dead Redemption 3. Rumor mill has it Rockstar is working on Bully 2. It's also possible that they're working on Grand Theft Auto 6. So I think we're going to see those 2 games come out before Red Dead Redemption 3, which means we could be anywhere from, at the very least, 8 to 10 years from the next Red Dead game, if we even get a Red Dead Redemption game. So this is what I think will transpire. And I know some people are going to disagree with me, Kane specifically, because, he does make a good point that technically with Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, John, Arthur, the van der Linde gang story has been wrapped up. But I feel like Rockstar could very well end up just sticking with the name Red Dead Redemption, as well as all these characters that they have been creating, establishing, as well as alluding to. I think that Red Dead Redemption 3 will probably be set in the late 1880s, specifically 1887. Now, credit to Red Dead Wiki, it's 1887. This is when the van der Linde gang officially begins robbing. Now, they have been kind of established for a few years, but this is when they get off the ground. Now, between the years 1887 and 1889, the van der Linde gang allegedly robs around 37 banks, roughly in various parts of the country. The events of Red Dead Redemption 3 would probably have to take place out west, because that's where the gang was. That's where they were hanging out. That's where a lot of these robberies occurred, was out west. So obviously that would mean new locations created. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't see them ever using real states or real cities. They allude to real states and real cities in the world of Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, but they always create fictional states and fictional cities and towns for the game to exist in when you play. So I don't think we're going to see California, Nevada, Mojave Desert, etc. However, there are locations already established that they could use, specifically from Red Dead Revolver. Now, I think that there's going to be some tie-in to Red Dead Revolver. At least I would like for there to be. Once again, this is just my idea. Red Dead Revolver is technically the original game in the franchise. And the name Red comes from the protagonist of Red Dead Revolver, Red Harlow. So it makes sense that they would find a way to bring some of the characters in Red Dead Revolver into Red Dead Redemption 3, especially if Red Dead Redemption 3 is set in 1887, because Red Dead Revolver was set in the 1880s. It connects. So I would like to see Red Harlow, Jack Swift, Annie Stokes, Buffalo Soldier. Those four at the very least would be good to pepper in, or maybe like one or two of them. Maybe not all four, but you could put all four of them in if you want at this point or that point throughout the events of Red Dead Redemption 3. Now, as I mentioned with locations, there's a number of locations that they could create that are brand new, but they could also go back to Red Dead Revolver and use locations that were in that game, such as Bear Mountain, the town of Brimstone, Broken Creek, Clementine Falls, Falling Creek, Fort Diego, which was in Mexico, so they could have like some Western Mexican states, whereas Red Dead Redemption 1 has, a couple of Eastern Mexican states, so they could do that with Fort Diego, Hell Pass, Rogue Valley, Stokes Ranch, as well as Sunset Canyon, the ghost town of Tarnation, as well as Twin Rocks. Now, Twin Rocks is interesting because Twin Rocks already exists in both Red Dead Redemption 2 and Red Dead Redemption 1. So Rockstar could retcon Twin Rocks from Red Dead Revolver to the same Twin Rocks that already exists in Red Dead Redemptions 1 and 2, which could imply that a portion of New Austin might be part of Red Dead Redemption 3. And the final location I'll mention is Widow's Patch. So, yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of things that transpire in new locations set maybe in the western part of New Austin, and that's probably as far east as you can go. Now, the parts of New Austin that could be included in Red Dead Redemption 3 that I think would work is obviously the western half of New Austin, like Gaptooth. That's where you find Tumbleweed, so you could have a younger Tumbleweed in Red Dead Redemption 3, as well as maybe a fully functional Fort Mercer that's actually stationed by the United States military. That's in Rio Bravo, as well as Cholla Springs, which includes Armadillo. So it would be a thriving Armadillo before the cholera outbreak. And I think that's as far as you could go east in Red Dead Redemption 3. So you wouldn't be able to go into Hennigan's Stead, even though it is still technically part of New Austin. It would be blocked off. I know it's kind of a convenience thing, but maybe they have something blocking the path into Pike's Basin or the very other pathways that you can take in order to get into Hennigan's Stead. It's the same thing like with West Elizabeth. Technically, Big Valley is part of West Elizabeth, but you can't go into Big Valley in Red Dead Redemption 1, whereas it's included as part of West Elizabeth in Red Dead Redemption 2. So they could theoretically make it work, because eventually there has to be a quote-unquote border to the map of Red Dead Redemption 3. And if it's set out west, they could also use this western part of New Austin as the familiar, and at the same time as far east as the Vanderlyn gang ends up going. Now, some other characters I think obviously should be in my version of Red Dead Redemption 3, along with Red Harlow, Jack Swift, Annie Stokes, Buffalo Soldier, making appearances or playing a varying degree of roles in Red Dead Redemption 3. Obviously, characters from the Vanderlyn gang, Dutch Vanderlyn, Hosea Matthews, as well as his wife Bessie Matthews, Annabelle, Dutch's lover, younger Arthur and John, as well as Mac and Davy Callender, Colm O'Driscoll, Susan Grimshaw. So we already have a list of characters that we know it would make sense to see them again in a previous game, like Red Dead Redemption 3, which would be a prequel to Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a prequel to the first Red Dead Redemption. I don't know if we would end up meeting younger Arthur Morgan or John Marston. I think they would already be in the gang, especially if the starting point of the Vanderlyn gang is their very first robbery in 1887. So you'd already have those characters established. You'd already have some members in the gang, but you'll be dealing with younger versions of them. So you could also have the events where Annabelle is killed by Colm O'Driscoll, as well as Dutch killing Colm's brother. So what happened is, that's what sparked the feud between Dutch and Colm. They used to have an uneasy truce. You could even elaborate a little bit more in Red Dead Redemption 3 that maybe they were friends, maybe they were pals. And they each had separate gangs. They each disagreed with how each gang did things. Something happens between Dutch and Colm's brother. Dutch, for whatever rhyme or reason, kills Colm's brother. Maybe it's a sign of Dutch, that first spark of madness occurring within Dutch. And as in retaliation, Colm kills Annabelle, Dutch's lover, which makes things even worse. Not only for Dutch, who's now grieving the loss of Annabelle, giving him one step closer to the Dutch that he's going to become in Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, as well as initiating the blood feud between the Van der Linde gang and the O'Driscoll gang. And as mentioned in Discord, one of the rival gangs, if we go a different route, if you were to play a character, say, in a younger Driscoll gang, then that would make sense too. So it's not part of my vision for Red Dead Redemption 3, but I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was a good idea. That maybe instead of being part of the Van der Linde gang, maybe you're a new member in the Driscoll gang. So you see things from Colm Driscoll's point of view and from his gang's point of view. And then eventually maybe something happens. You end up having a falling out with the Driscoll gang, and that's where the redemption arc for your character begins with that situation. So you could go that route. It's one of many possibilities that could most definitely occur in Red Dead Redemption 3. Now, my ideas for protagonists, some candidates, some obvious ones would be a younger Dutch Van der Linde. Some people like the idea, some people don't. Kane considers it to be a cash grab. I disagree because I think as long as Rockstar builds a brilliant game with a great story and familiar characters, people are still going to want to play Red Dead Redemption 3, even if it is an obvious prequel to Red Dead Redemption 2. And if Dutch is the protagonist, I'm sure a lot of people would not mind playing a younger Dutch Van der Linde. And since several of these events revolve specifically around Dutch, like lover Annabelle being killed, as well as his decision to kill Colm's brother for whatever rhyme or reason prior to Annabelle being murdered, and some other things that happen and occur, it would make sense for Dutch to be the protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 3. You could also go the route of actually having a female character as the protagonist. What if Bessie Matthews, Hosea's wife, was the protagonist? Probably not very likely, but we don't know very much about her except for she was Hosea's love interest. And it may not make sense because it seems like she accepted Hosea as the life he lived, but it appears that there was a time when she actually left the gang and Hosea left the gang as well. So she may not end up being a good candidate for being the protagonist for Red Dead Redemption 2, which, by the way, has nothing to do with her being female. It just may not work properly. But the other candidate could be Red Harlow. Now, I don't think Red Harlow would be the protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 3 if Rockstar chose to go down this route, doing a prequel of a prequel. Red Harlow could end up being an antagonist of sorts because Red Harlow is a bounty hunter. And if law enforcement starts putting a bounty on Dutch's head and on the Van der Linde gang's head, resulting from these robberies that initiate in 1887, then obviously there will be bounty hunters wanting to reap the reward and bring justice to Dutch Van der Linde as well as members of his gang. So maybe Red Harlow has his own crew of bounty hunters, and maybe that includes Jack Swift and Buffalo Soldier. I think Annie Stokes ended up going back to her ranch. Not trying to spoil anything that happens in Red Dead Revolver, but it's also possible that we may see interactions from these characters. Maybe not at the same time, but it's quite possible that Red Harlow and Jack Swift could end up becoming antagonists to the Van der Linde gang, and perhaps we find out what happens to Red Harlow and Jack Swift because of them colliding with Dutch Van der Linde, Hosea, as well as the Calendar Boys and a younger John and Arthur. And maybe it doesn't end so well for Red Harlow or Jack Swift. But at the same time, I feel like these characters deserve to be included in the Red Dead Redemption universe, because without Red Harlow, without Jack Swift, Annie Stokes, Buffalo Soldier, Shadow Wolf, and the others, and Red Dead Revolver itself, we would have never gotten Red Dead Redemption or Red Dead Redemption 2. So I feel like they deserve to be included. And it would make sense if Red Dead Redemption 3 took place in the late 1880s. So it would serve as an official sequel to Red Dead Revolver, as well as a prequel to Red Dead Redemption 3. But there also has to be the redemption arc. And that's another reason why I don't know if Dutch van der Linde would be a good character as the protagonist for redemption. This hypothetical former member of the O'Driscoll gang, or member of the Driscoll gang that eventually leaves the gang, there could be a redemption arc there. Or you could have a completely unnamed character who maybe was a founding member of the van der Linde gang, along with Dutch and Hosea. The problem that happens there is, why wasn't this third founder of the van der Linde gang mentioned in the events of Red Dead Redemption 3? The same reason why Arthur Morgan wasn't mentioned in Red Dead Redemption 1. It's the same thing. Like, John Marston doesn't want to talk about Arthur. And maybe Arthur and John and Dutch and Hosea don't want to talk about the protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 3. I know that's I guess you could say, a cheap way of retconning a new character as the protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 3, but at the same time, in order to keep the name Redemption in Red Dead Redemption 3, there has to be some sort of redemption arc. Or else you might as well just call it something else, like Red Dead Revolution or Red Dead Renegades or Red Dead Rebellion, or something else that has the name R added at the end. Similar to what we thought the third Red Dead game was going to be called, because originally there was Red Dead Revolver, then there was Red Dead Redemption, and a lot of us believed that Red Dead 3 was going to be called something else entirely, until Rockstar officially announced that it was in fact going to be Red Dead Redemption 2. So it makes sense for this game, the fourth game in the Red Dead franchise, to be Red Dead Redemption 3. So those are my ideas, my thoughts regarding what I think Red Dead Redemption 3 should be. What direction would you like to see Red Dead Redemption 3 go? Do you like my ideas? Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with someone else's ideas that were already brought up in Discord? Would you like Red Dead Redemption 3 to take place in a completely different period further back in the Wild West? Maybe completely new characters? Feel free and share your ideas, thoughts, views, opinions regarding what you would like to see with Red Dead Redemption 3 below in the comments section.